think power means being loud? Think it's about fear, threats, making people bow down? You're dead wrong. Real dominance doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need a stage or an audience. The people who actually control outcomes never need to prove it. They operate in silence, shaping decisions before anyone realizes there was a choice. What if everything you thought about power was backwards? What if the ones screaming the loudest have already lost? Let me show you what real control looks like. Why every tyrant eventually falls. The fatal flaw of visible power. Here's something that'll mess with your head. Throughout history, the loudest rulers, the most brutal dictators, the ones who flexed their power constantly, they all collapsed. Every single one. Stalin, Mussolini, countless emperors who thought fear equaled control. Gone. Destroyed. Forgotten. Why? Because they played the wrong game. They thought dominance was about being seen, being feared, making people submit through force. That's not power. That's weakness disguised as strength. Real power doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need validation. It works in the background, reshaping reality before anyone notices the change. It's the difference between a dictator who rules through terror and a strategist who shapes culture itself. Look at Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome. He commanded the most powerful military force on earth. Yet his writings reveal something deeper. He understood that external control meant nothing without internal mastery. He knew that forcing obedience created enemies, while inspiring loyalty created empires that lasted centuries. That's the secret. True dominance isn't about what you can take by force. It's about what people willingly give you, because you've shaped how they think, how they see the world, how they define success itself. The corporate world proves this every day. Think about the difference between toxic bosses and legendary leaders. The toxic boss micromanages, threatens, demands. People hate them, sabotage them, leave the moment they can. The legendary leader creates a vision so compelling that people sacrifice sleep to make it real. Same goal, completely different psychology. This isn't motivational fluff. This is strategic dominance at the highest level. It's understanding that human beings don't respond to orders. They respond to meaning, identity, purpose. Control those elements, and you control outcomes without ever raising your voice. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people in power positions today have no real power at all. They have titles. They have authority granted by systems. But the moment that system changes, they're exposed. Because they never built actual influence. They never learned to operate beyond visible force. The masters of true dominance throughout history were rarely the ones with crowns. They were the advisors, the architects, the strategists who shaped decisions from the shadows. Cardinal Mazarin controlled France while the king played. Chanakya shaped an empire while remaining unknown to most citizens. Kissinger rewrote global politics while presidents took the spotlight. That's not coincidence. That's strategy. That's understanding that real control happens where no one's watching. In the assumptions people make. In the options they think they have. In the narratives that define what's possible. And if you think that's intense, wait until you see how this applies to modern power structures. What if you're being controlled right now without knowing it? Let's get uncomfortable. Because chances are, you're being manipulated right now and don't even realize it. Not by some conspiracy, by systems designed so well that resistance feels like choice. Think about your phone. You believe you control it, right? You decide when to check it, what apps to open, how long to scroll. Except that's not true. Every notification, every infinite scroll, every autoplay feature was engineered by behavioral psychologists to hijack your attention. You're not using the phone, it's using you. And you call it convenience. That's elite-level dominance. Create a system where control feels like freedom, where dependence feels like choice, where you can't imagine life without the thing that's actually controlling you. The greatest power move in history isn't conquest. It's making conquest look like progress. Making control look like service. Making manipulation look like value. Amazon doesn't dominate through force. It dominates by making everything else inconvenient. One-click ordering, same-day delivery, personalized recommendations. Now try living without it. Try going back to physical stores, slow shipping, manual searching. It feels like punishment. That's not accident. That's architecture. Jeff Bezos didn't just build a company. He reshaped consumer behavior itself. He made an entire generation dependent on a system he controls, and people thank him for it. That's dominance at a level most can even comprehend. Now look at how this applies to personal power. The people who truly control outcomes in business, relationships, negotiations. They never force. They never demand. They create frameworks where the other person arrives at the conclusion naturally. Master negotiators don't start by stating their terms. They start by understanding what the other person values, fears, desires. Then they frame the negotiation so their preferred outcome is like the obvious win-win. The other person walks away thinking they drove the deal. Meanwhile, the master got exactly what they wanted from the beginning. This is high-level psychology, understanding that humans are predictable, that ego blinds, that people will choose the option that lets them feel smart, powerful, in control, even when they're being guided every step. The intelligence agencies perfected this. The CIA doesn't just gather information, it shapes narratives, plants stories, creates movements that look organic, but serve strategic goals. Entire revolutions engineered to look spontaneous. That's the apex of invisible control. And here's what separates amateurs from masters. Amateurs need credit. They need recognition. They need people to know how smart they are. Masters don't care. They just want the outcome. They'll let others take credit while they reshape reality. So here's the question. How much of your life is actually your choice versus carefully architected influence? How to spot fake power before it collapses. Now, we're getting to the tactical stuff. How do you identify who has real power versus who's just playing dress up with the title? Simple. Watch what happens when they're challenged. People with fake power get defensive immediately. They raise their voice. They pull rank. They threaten consequences. That's panic. That's someone who knows their position is fragile and can't handle examination. People with real power, they stay calm because challenges don't threaten them. They either have leverage you don't see, or they're confident enough in their position that your challenge is irrelevant. They don't need to defend, they just outlast. Look at Warren Buffett during market crashes. While everyone panics, he buys. While others defend their decisions, he just executes his strategy. He doesn't need to prove anything because his power isn't based on image. It's based on decades of built credibility and actual results. Now contrast that with the countless CEOs who collapsed under pressure. Theranos, WeWork, FTX. Leaders who talked a big game raised billions, built cults of personality. But the moment scrutiny arrived, they crumbled. Because there was no substance, just performance. That's the pattern. Fake power needs constant reinforcement. It needs displays, reminders, performances. Real power just exists. It doesn't need announcement because it's embedded in systems, relationships, dependencies that persist regardless of attention. Here's another tell. Fake power needs enemies. It needs conflict to justify itself. Real power makes enemies irrelevant. It doesn't destroy them directly. That's wasteful and creates martyrs. It simply makes them obsolete, changes the game so their opposition doesn't matter. Tech companies do this brilliantly. Microsoft didn't destroy competitors by fighting them. It made them irrelevant by controlling the operating system. Google didn't beat other search engines in debate. It made them pointless by being better. Apple didn't argue with critics. It built products so good that criticism became noise. That's strategic dominance, not winning arguments. Making arguments irrelevant by changing the paradigm itself. In personal contexts, the same principle applies. People with fake power in relationships need control, validation, constant proof of their importance. People with real influence, they create environments where others want to stay, where leaving feels like loss, not through fear, through genuine value. The military strategist John Boyd understood this perfectly. He didn't just study tactics, he studied how systems adapt and collapse. His OODA loop concept: observe, orient, decide, Act is about moving faster than your opponent can process. Not by being louder, by being quicker at the psychological level. And once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. Fake power is everywhere, collapsing constantly. Real power is invisible, persisting eternally. Drop a comment, substance. Then tell me, who's someone you thought had power but realized was all show? If this perspective shift hit you, smash that like button and subscribe. We're diving deeper into the psychology of true influence. What happens when you stop chasing recognition and start building real influence? Final piece. This is where it all comes together. How do you actually build real power instead of just performing it? First, kill your ego's need for immediate validation. Every time you need people to know how smart, how capable, how important you are, you're leaking power. Real builders don't broadcast the blueprint while they're constructing. They show the finished product when it's too late to copy. Elon Musk didn't announce he was going to revolutionize space travel and ask for permission. He quietly built SpaceX, failed repeatedly, in private, refined the approach, then launched successfully when skeptics couldn't deny the results anymore. By the time the world paid attention, he'd already reshaped the industry. That's the playbook. Build in silence. Launch with proof. Let results speak while critics are still arguing about whether it's possible. Second, create systems, not spectacles. Spectacles fade. Systems persist. A viral moment gets attention. A well-designed system generates compounding returns for decades. Focus on architecture, not performance. The Roman Empire didn't last 1,000 years because of individual emperors. It lasted because of roads, aqueducts, legal frameworks, military organization. Systems that outlived any single person. That's legacy. That's power that transcends your lifespan. Third, make yourself valued, not visible. There's a crucial difference. Visibility is about attention. Value is about necessity. When you're valuable, people seek you out. When you're just visible, you're competing for scraps of attention in an oversaturated market. The best engineers, strategists, dealmakers rarely have massive public profiles, but they're indispensable to the people who matter. They're the ones getting calls at midnight because they're the only one who can solve the problem. That's real power. That's being positioned where decisions happen. Fourth, play infinite games, not finite ones. Finite games have winners and losers, clear endings, defined rules. Infinite games have evolving objectives, persistent players, adaptive strategies. People obsessed with finite wins burn out. People playing infinite games build empires. Jeff Bezos didn't just want to win online retail. He wanted to build infrastructure that makes him essential to the entire internet. AWS powers competitors' websites. That's infinite game thinking. Control the foundation, and you don't care who builds what on top. And finally, never mistake the map for the territory. Titles are maps. Actual relationships, skills, leverage, that's territory. Collect territory, not maps. Build real capability, not credentials. The world is full of people with impressive RSUMs and empty networks. And it's full of people with no credentials who control outcomes because they understand leverage, psychology, timing. You choose which one you become, the one who looks powerful or the one who actually is. Comment the word builder. Now answer this. What's one thing you're doing for recognition that you should kill immediately? If this rewired how you see power, hit that like, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone still chasing illusions. Because this kind of knowledge changes everything when you actually apply it. This content is for educational and personal development purposes only. The strategies presented should be applied ethically and responsibly.